What better way to celebrate our 85 years in Sunnyvale than to reach back into our rich resources in the Sunnyvale collection to find things like those included on the timeline that the librarians have developed for you to look at, and to reach out into the community who've always placed a high value on the library. Since the beginning, this has been a place where the past was honored. Many see the library as a place to touch the future, and in fact, 1,700 hours a week of internet time take place here. And that represents more than 1 million hits on the internet a month. At the same time, others rely on us to deal with the present. Help me with this assignment. Help me understand this civic issue. Show me where the council agendas are. Can you help me find investment information or ideas on how to rear my children? Factual data about our society. This is really the beauty of a public library. It accommodates the blending of the past with the future, serving as the loom upon which the fabric of our community remains visible. Thank you so much for being with us today to help show you a little bit more of the fabric of our community. And now I'd like to introduce Steve Sloan, who will introduce our first speaker. But it looks like he may have stepped out of the room. So, our timing's a little off, but we'll get it down.
Sorry about that. Good afternoon. I'm pleased to be introducing Mayor Manuel Valerio today. Manny is a native of Sunnyvale. His aunt and uncle owned a farm along Matilda Avenue, where he remembers as a young boy spending many a summer wandering through the orchards picking fruit. He is a graduate of the Sunnyvale school system, having attended Bishop Elementary, Benner Junior High, and Sunnyvale High School. After completing his undergraduate and graduate studies in history at San Jose State, he has been actively involved in the community and local government. A Sunnyvale City Council member since 1995, and Sunnyvale's mayor since 1998. Would you please join me in welcoming Mayor Manuel Valerio? I believe there is a microphone that I could use handheld one. I'm going to check and see if this one's working. Is the volume okay here? Yeah. Great, thanks. This works. Good. Good afternoon, everybody. As Steve said, I'm Manuel Valerio and have the distinct pleasure and honor of being the mayor for the city of Sunnyvale. And it has been a pleasure for me to be serving on the city council as one of your 7 council members. And of course, it's especially a great source of pride for me because, again, I was born here in the area and I've lived in Sunnyvale all my life. So you can imagine just what a thrill it is to be able to say you're on the city council and serving the community in the place that you hold very near and dear in your heart, and where you've made a lot of friends and met a lot of fantastic people throughout your lifetime. As Steve said, I grew up here, and I can remember many of the days that I think a lot of people in this room remember about the community of Sunnyvale and the Santa Clara Valley. And if you had a chance to already look through the room and see some of the pictures on the wall, both at the back of the room as well as here on the display, you can certainly see what this valley was like. The Valley of Heart's Delight, a place certainly world-renowned for its agricultural production, a place where blossoms filled the valley floor during the springtime, and where, from one end of the valley to the other, you saw nothing but beautiful fruit trees adorning the valley floor. Well, things have changed, and I think all of us, with some sense of sadness, lament some of those changes and are sorry to see our agricultural heritage changing and going away. But I'd like to think that we still have a very great community in which to live. Some of my earliest recollections as a young boy growing up in Sunnyvale were of the farms and the orchards here in the valley. And indeed, as Steve said, my family, my aunt and uncle, the Vivo family, had a farm on Matilda Avenue near 101, really where today is now the Larkspur Landing Hotel, the Hobie's Restaurant, the Shell gas station, and a couple of other hotels and other such structures. But they began farming here themselves in the late 1930s and bought that piece of land in 1940. And then my parents settled here in 1956, having come from Portugal. And I was born in 1958. I like to note that I was born the same year that City Hall was built. I think both of us have seen a lot of changes here since we have been a part of this community. But I have a recollection of Sunnyvale as a young man of a very special place, a place where youngsters grew up with a sense of security and calmness, a sense of the community caring about their children and about one another, a place where a child could play and have fun and enjoy a very clean and healthy life, and a place that had great schools and great programs for youngsters from the very beginning. And I also recall that we had a great library program, and that's the primary reason we're here today, and that's to celebrate our heritage as well as to celebrate the 85th anniversary of our Sunnyvale Library program. And while I don't have any one specific incident that I could relate about the library, such as maybe being asked to be quiet by the librarian for having made too much noise, I do remember a good number of days and hours spent here, especially when I was in junior high school and also in high school, days spent and evenings and afternoons spent doing additional research on term papers and reports and various homework and school assignments. And I always remembered that it was a good place to come and to read and to do the research. The librarians, as I recall, as I think they are today, I know they are today, were always very helpful, very earnest in their desire to make sure that a young man or young lady or anybody coming to the library was able to find what they needed and to get the help and direction that they were looking for, whether they were doing schoolwork or whether they were looking up something to advance their career or they were simply looking up something to enrich their lives in some way. So I'd like to continue to commend our fine library staff, and want to thank all of you for being here because, again, I think you're showing just how important our library program is. And I would say that a public library is one of the most important things that a city, if you will, that a community does for itself. It is something that enriches our lives and gives us a great opportunity to advance our lives and those of our families. And I think without public libraries, we'd be a far poorer community than we are now. So I think it's important for us to continue to support the libraries and to provide the best services that we can. Just to speak again momentarily on my childhood, I attended Bishop Elementary School, and I know probably a number of you were here or were at the school the other day when the school district celebrated its 100th anniversary, and that was a great opportunity to reminisce about our rich past and all of the accomplishments in our community. And then I attended Benner Junior High School after that and went on to Sunnyvale High School following that, and then on to San Jose State University. But again, just to reminisce momentarily, I felt that Sunnyvale was a community that allowed myself and my peers to grow up in a safe environment, and one that was very nurturing, and one where everyone helped their neighbors and their friends, and it was a place where people really got a great opportunity to make the most of their own lives. And I think that spirit exists today, even though times have changed, if you will, and we no longer have all of the farmland, all of the orchard land that we used to have. It's still, I think, a very special place. It's a different place, and one can't argue, as a gentleman said earlier, that there is more traffic, there is more smog. It's vastly different than it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. But I like to think that we as a community, while we may lament, again, the loss of that agricultural past, we honor it, we acknowledge it, we appreciate those who have come before us and who were the pioneers. But I think we have pioneers today in different walks of life, whether it's in education and science and research and everything that makes up what is granted now called Silicon Valley, right here in Santa Clara Valley. And I like to think that the people in this room here today and those who will follow us will continue to make Sunnyvale a good place in which to live. And so that 100 years from now, when they're celebrating the 185th anniversary of the Sunnyvale Public Library system, people can sit here in this room or whatever facilities exist, if you will, and honor the past and still look forward to a very bright future. This is a part of our history. This is a part of our lives. But every day that we're here, we're writing another chapter of that history. And the book goes on. It's not complete, and it won't be complete. It'll be an ongoing thing that we can work on, a work in progress, if you will. So with that, I would just like to say thank you again for being here. We're going to hear from some other wonderful speakers who have some great stories, I think, to tell us and to share with us. And I know everyone in this room probably has a great story to tell about their lives here in Sunnyvale and what they've seen and what's taken place during their experiences here. So again, I'd just like to thank you. Again, congratulations to our great library program, to Vicki Johnson and to her great staff, and to all the people who work in the library, as well as the wonderful volunteers who also volunteer for our library program and serve the community that way. I wish them all well, and again, I want to thank you for your time. So with that, I guess I'll be glad to turn over the microphone. Who will be coming up next to make the next introduction? Sure. You can use the podium, so I will put this back over here.
My name is Mary Chartrain, and I'm one of the librarians here. And it's my great pleasure to introduce Ann Hines. When she gave me her biographical information, she said, well, you don't have to read all this, but I want to because it's just so interesting and so impressive. Ann and her husband, Don, have been residents of Sunnyvale since 1970. They were the founding members of a grassroots citizens organization called Orchards, Organization of Responsible Citizens to Halt Reckless Development in Sunnyvale. It's a mouthful.
You said it perfectly, with all the proper emphasis.
Okay. Especially reckless, right? Okay. Over a period of 6 to 8 years in the 70s and early 80s, the Citizens Lobby was responsible for the resetting of a number of community priorities regarding both open space and open government in Sunnyvale. During the late 1970s, Ann is credited with developing a historic preservation plan that included the City of Sunnyvale's first inventory of its heritage resources, creation of an historic preservation commission, and the saving of the last commercial block of Sunnyvale's old downtown, the 100 block of Murphy Avenue, which is now a heritage district. In 1981, Ann was honored as Sunnyvale's first Distinguished Citizen of the Year for the impact of her volunteer work. She has served on boards and commissions at the city, county, and statewide levels since 1975, and for the past 10 years has served as Director of Leadership Sunnyvale, which was the first community leadership development program in the area. So Sunnyvale's was a model for programs that now exist in San Jose to San Mateo. An educator by training, she is also a published author and former television hostess, having hosted a cooking show on cable TV called What's Cooking with Ann Hines. Ann is now helping spearhead final funding for OPI, Orchard Heritage Park Interpretive Exhibit, a living museum that will tell the story of the Valley of the Heart's Delight at the 10-acre heritage orchard that has been preserved at the Sunnyvale Community Center. And in case you want to know what Ann was doing this weekend, she was one of the chairs of the Orchard Heritage Blossom Fair Festival and Barbecue that occurred yesterday, where 400 people attended. So she managed to make time for us too this weekend. It's with great pleasure that I introduce Ann Hines to you now, and her slideshow.
Well, it's wonderful to be here, and I'm just delighted to have been asked. Can you hear me okay? A number of you were at the wonderful Heritage Festival yesterday and barbecue. It was just a grand event. And what we're doing and if you haven't visited the Heritage Park, it's at the community center at Monet and Michelangelo and those streets. It's a 10-acre orchard. It's the largest orchard in the county that has been preserved in the public sector. And it's a working orchard. Debbie's father continues to maintain that orchard and will for a long time, I'm sure. It's not only the largest orchard in the county, it's also the only one that combines a working orchard with an interpretive exhibit that we're hoping to build next year that will tell the story, the wonderful story of this Valley of Heart's Delight. And what I want to do with my time with you is to just give you some images about what this valley was like over the past 100 years. It was truly magnificent. And as part of the OPI project, we are pulling together an honor roll list of all the early orchard families. I just told Manny we've got to get his aunt and uncle because we don't have them yet, who contributed to, who really were the foundation for what we are today, which is a global capital, the center really of so much of the world's business. And this agricultural era really is the foundation for all that has come today, and we continue to be great. So it is a continuum, and it's just wonderful to be pulling together this information, particularly about all these families. And if any of you know of families who have not yet heard about filling out a survey to have their contributions be listed on the honor roll, see me afterwards so I can be sure that you get one. So without any further ado, let me give you, as I say, some visual images primarily of the Valley of Heart's Delight, focusing on orchards. By the way, that citizens lobby was called Orchards. And it was a time in 1970, gee, that's a pretty pattern. It is. Can you close that curtain? When we moved here, Sunnyvale was really growing very, very, very fast. The ultimate build-out was projected to be about 200,000 people. And the orchards were coming down weekly. A lot of them had already come down. And we were newcomers, but we loved what we had come to. And over a period of 8 to 10 years, really did, I think, make a difference in shifting some priorities at City Hall. And it's with some pride that I note that our city build-out today is, Manny, currently we're about 135, 120.
I think it's 145 is the max.
140. So 145 is the build-out. Right. We're about 137 now. So Vice Mayor Pat Breeder is also here, and I think all of us agree that the growth path that we were on a number of years ago when this whole valley was growing so fast probably isn't what most people wanted. And so it's nice to be able to appreciate a stable community now. Well, the orchard story really began in Santa Clara Valley in the late 1880s. And it was celebrated in a wonderful book published by the San Jose Mercury in 1896. And this is a grand book, and I'm sure the library has a copy of the reprint of this book, and it just celebrated the valley's residents, their wonderful homes, the orchards, the vineyards, this idyllic environment that they lived in and truly, truly loved. And the best part of this book is the cover. And here it comes. Sunshine, fruit, and flowers, Santa Clara County, California. And that's just as lush and wonderful as it was. This was a souvenir publication of the Mercury, and as I said, in 1896. By the 1920s, Santa Clara Valley had 8 million trees blooming in the spring. And from these early orchard family surveys that they're sending us, it's just wonderful to hear them talk about how it was just like it was snowing in the springtime when those blossom petals would start to blow. How many of you were here in that time? Not as many. Well, okay. a sense of it. And you know, we hear about Blossom Hill Road in San Jose. Well, I finally really got what Blossom Hill Road was. That's where everybody went. That's why it was named Blossom Hill Road, because that's where you could get a little elevation and look out. In fact, that's where this picture was painted from. It's a painting from Blossom Hill Road. So it was truly, truly an incredible place. And the economic lifeblood of the valley was the orchards and the fruit that was produced. Growing it, tending the orchards, picking, cutting, and drying, and picking the fruit, and canning. It was a shared enterprise where father and son, mother and daughter, and one generation to the next worked the farm together. And this is a shot from the Olson's farm, and Debbie will be speaking to you next. In the heyday of fruit production, Santa Clara County was dubbed the Valley of Heart's Delight by local promoters and immigrants from all over the valley, immigrants from all over, mostly Southern Europe, poured into this rich valley. And this is a promotional postcard produced by the San Jose Chamber of Commerce. And it's a really wonderful depiction. I have a little thing here, but I can't use it, Gio, I'm sorry. Of the Santa Clara Valley with the orchards and the San Francisco Bay and the ocean off to the left. And a lot of the promotions that were done of Santa Clara Valley and of Sunnyvale too were done before flight was commonplace. And I'm always amazed at how accurate they were at depicting our geography before, you know, they could fly over it commonly. This is another promotional piece that was aimed specifically at Sunnyvale. And it similarly shows the bay on the right, the ocean to the left, the foothills in between. And I think it's really quite remarkable. But this was Sunnyvale in 1907. And you can see the rich farmlands and just scattered communities of this essentially is how Sunnyvale was in 1907. It wasn't long before the Santa Clara Valley boasted over 7,000 small family farms. And it claimed to be a poor man's paradise, a place where people could afford to buy what some people called ranchettes, 5 to 10 acres of land, and live and walk to their jobs. And many of them worked at Hendy Iron Works, which relocated from San Francisco after the 1906 earthquake and fire and settled in the middle of a prune orchard in Sunnyvale, California. So it was just an idyllic time. Gala festivals were held in communities around the valley celebrating the local light of spring. There were Blossom Trail excursions that people followed by automobile, by train, and even the Gray Line bus tours came down from San Francisco, I learned from some of these survey forms we received, to see the blossoms in the spring. When acre upon acre would burst forth with fragrant, colorful blossoms. Well, cherries were the first crop to come in June, with the largest cherry ranches and the best ones in the valley in the Sunnyvale area. Apricots followed around the 4th of July. Then came pears. And this is a picture you may have remembered from the Mercury about 6 months ago of the Doria Farms on Capitol Avenue in San Jose. There are 9,000 trays of pears lying out there, drying in the sun. And that family is still farming and packing and drying fruit. They were at the barbecue being honored yesterday. And then of course, prunes coming in September. And on more than one occasion, school started late in September because main part of the workforce for picking prunes were the kids. And it was a hard job. And on this survey form, we asked people, what's the hardest work you ever did? And they all said, picking prunes. Because they were picked up off the ground. And so the kids in and have dinner in the evening, her father would say, "Well, Joni, how many acres of land did you crawl over today?" Picking prunes. And of course, prunes wound up being the biggest crop in this valley. We really were the prune capital of the world, peaking in about 1930 as far as the prune market was concerned. In the 1930s, we peaked at about 275,000 tons of prunes. And then finally, walnuts in the fall. And this happens to be a picture of a walnut orchard that was located, and some of you may correct me, but I believe right here, because it was at Pastoria and El Camino Real. And it was owned by the Wilson family, and Mr. Wilson specially bred walnuts with so that they produced a very large nut. And they sold them to Neiman Marcus, not for the nut meat, but for this big, beautiful shell, about the size of a golf ball. We have a couple of them at the museum. And Neiman Marcus packaged expensive ladies' pigskin gloves inside the walnut shell for their very exclusive customers. So Wilson Wonder walnuts and Pastoria and El Camino had to have been right here. Is that right? Good. Well, with the increasing orchard crops came canneries. This is a view from Shuckles Cannery that used to be at Fair Oaks, and the railroad that was succeeded by California Canners and Growers is now apartments. And packing houses. And then Libby McNeil and Libby, about 1907, heard about the Santa Clara Valley, and they selected Sunnyvale, which they heard was the garden spot of the world, to expand their already successful Midwest operation of tinned meats and canned vegetables to add fruits. And is anybody around here remembering, before our wonderful sign ordinance, the big billboard that stood at Libby's entrance? We don't have billboards in Sunnyvale anymore, but when we did, Libby's had a big one, and it said, "Home of Libby's Fruit Cocktail, where 5 delicious fruits are in sweet cahoots." So, and of course, we have preserved the Libby's can as a heritage landmark to remind us of those days. And of course, and what we're in our survey, we're not just including the people who own the land, but we're including the workers who picked the fruit from this valley, and the canners and the packers and so forth. And here what you see are some cottages in the middle of the orchard that would house the migrant workers who would move from crop to crop. So, well, and so it continued until after World War II, when post-war growth changed everything. Post-war growth really is when it began paving over of the orchards and the farms. This is at Matilda and El Camino Real. We're looking south at the Olson orchard, which has just been such a treasure in this community for so long. And the fact that the Olson family has farmed an urban orchard, an orchard surrounded by urban development for 100 years, is just remarkable. And here's a shot from the Olson Ranch. And as I think we have probably all heard, this will be passing also as far as the land use is concerned, but the spirit of the Olsons and the business of the Olsons of selling fresh fruit and produce will continue, and Debbie will fill you in more on that. What's going on, of course, is the valley's industry has shifted from orchards to high technology. And we can be proud of the capital that we are today in that arena as well. I think the person who said it best was prize-winning author Wallace Stegner, who in his foreword to Yvonne Jacobson's wonderful book, Passing Farm's Enduring Values said, Silicon Valley is probably a good in many ways, but the Valley of Heart's, oh shoot, my pictures are mixed up. But the Valley of Heart's Delight was a glory. I seem to be going backwards. So Silicon Valley is probably a good in many ways, but the Valley of Heart's Delight was a glory, and I say amen. To not forget that glorious period, and to give our children a sense of the orchard era and the valley's rich agricultural heritage, we have succeeded in preserving 10 acres of orchard land, as I mentioned to you in the beginning, at the community center site. And we call it OPI, Orchard Heritage Park Interpretive Exhibit. And as I said, stay tuned because we hope to complete our fundraising in the next less than a year and erect the interpretive exhibit that will tell the story of the Valley of Heart's Delight. But if you haven't visited the orchard yet, please do stop by because this is a regional, county-wide facility, and we really saw that yesterday in the numbers of people, the early orchard families that came from all over the county, from Gilroy on up here to Sunnyvale. And so it will be used as an educational center for school children. Lee Weimers had in his column some time ago a little quote about a school teacher who asked her elementary school children what an orchard was. And one little boy raises his hand and says, I know. She calls on him and he says, it's where my dad goes every Saturday morning to buy paint and hardware. So we have a big job in front of us. And not only to let kids know what orchards are, but to really get them back in touch with where our food comes from. I mean, we're dependent on the earth that we are rapidly paving over. And so this is going to be the center for a wonderful educational program in a lot of things that I think are important to continue on into the future as important values for all of us. So that's it. Thank you for...
Thanks so much, Anne. That was really very wonderful. Thank you. And it is my pleasure now to introduce one of our fourth generation Sunnyvale residents or families, Deborah Olson. It's fitting after that presentation that we have Deborah here to speak to us. As I go to work every day, I drive by her orchards, and it is such a pleasure to see those beautiful trees. I wanted to tell you, we see Deborah's name and her family's name in the paper. We see their pictures in the paper all the time. But there is something I didn't know. Deborah's very involved, as you know, with the family business, and she was gracious enough to take some time today because it's very busy at the stand, and she did bring us some cherries. So there's maybe about enough for each of us to have 2. Then you'll have to go over to the stand and buy more. But she hasn't always been at the orchard stand. She spent some time in Paris becoming a gourmet cook. And she has done cooking on television and hopes that some of that experience will lend itself to some recipes that she can share with all of us. So she also is a wonderful cook, and maybe someday you'll cook something for us. She also spends time helping farmers bring their crops to market, and she does enjoy educating people on the importance of eating fruits and vegetables. So, Deborah, I'm so glad you're here with us today. Let's welcome Deborah.
Good afternoon. Isn't this just a lovely day? Aren't we lucky to finally have some great weather and the fruit's starting to come in, and now we can enjoy the whole summer eating good fruit and vegetables, which I will talk about a little bit later. Thank you for having me here, and it's an honor to be with Manny and with Anne and so many people here that I've seen all my life growing up, and that was partly because my grandmother, she started the fruit stand, the cherry stand on El Camino Matilda in 1933, and I know a lot of you here knew her, Rosie, we used to call her, and I used to work side by side with her, and I've been here all my life. Every summer I've spent right here in Sunnyvale selling cherries with my grandmother and my family. And things have changed. When I was growing up, this whole area was all orchards. I remember just walking from the house where I lived, which I still live on the same street on Crawford, right near Los Palmas Park. And as long as I'm sure a lot of you realize that Los Palmas Park was a pear orchard. And in back of Crawford, of course, the new development of homes is all cherry orchards. So it was, I just remember when I was little, getting on little motorcycles and going through the orchards, and of course trying not to get caught by the cops. I remember one day I was riding a little motorcycle and I fell in a ditch, one of the ditches they were irrigating cherry trees. And so that pretty much finished that art of motorcycle riding, and I knew that wasn't what I was supposed to be doing. So, and of course Matilda Extension came on. My grandfather was very upset about that because that was all our property, and that was really hard for him to deal with when he knew then that things were really starting to change, and I think that was in the early 60s when Matilda Extension, when they had to go through his orchard. But the other thing I would like to mention is every summer I can remember just it's cherry season and we just started doing cherries. I was the firstborn of our the grandchildren, and I was supposed to be a boy. And Frank, who was in the picture, drawing, helping put, he was on the forklift, and my brother was also in that picture, putting the apricots on the trays and moving it on so they can put them into the sulfur houses. Every year, because my birthday falls at cherry season, and my mother did that for a reason, because she didn't want to work. So she got pregnant, and everybody was excited, and it was right and smack dab in the cherry season, and boxers were going, and cherries and packers. In fact, the ladies that are still packing our hand-packed cherries still work for me, which is just wonderful. So I've spent every birthday of my life with these wonderful ladies. And so in 1957, in late May 31st, the phone rang, and everyone was excited about, okay, well, what did they have? You know, what did my mother have? And it was a girl. And Frank Martinez said, and he was nailing boxes, and he said, oh, Grandpa was so mad. And I went, oh, well, you got a girl, and I'm glad. I'm really glad. But out of it just seemed like for myself I was just destined to remain in the agriculture business. I also remember as a child, I was kind of, and I'm sure Amanda can relate, because we were the kids. We always had to work in the summer, and all the friends got to go to the beach or they got to go on vacation. And I remember going to my friend's house and swimming in the swimming pool, and for just a brief moment, mind you, just wet. And then my grandmother would find me and call me at my girlfriend's house, and just, oh my God, it's too busy at the fruit stand. You got to hurry, hurry. So I put my clothes on. My hair is all wet, and I get on my bicycle, and I run over to the fruit stand, and of course, it was busy, which I'm glad it was still busy, so that's a good thing. But, and since then, it's just been the same. We, a lot of us here, I'm sure, remember cutting apricots. I remember in the early days that we had to cut apricots. I mean, my grandfather, there was just no ifs, ands, buts about it. And the one thing that I always remember is that we cut apricots till noon, and then we cut them enough so we cut them all that day and we could go home. And I remember going to my grandma's house having lunch, and he would always say, well, can you just stay for another hour or two and just cut one or two more trays? And so we did, and it was only 2 or 3 weeks long, and then it was over with, and then the prune season came. And I totally agree. That was the worst. because we had it, I just never forget. I remember my grandmother and her bandana, and in those days, you know, those women were always wearing dresses and those work shoes and an apron. And I just remember picking prunes, and I just did not like that. That was really tough. And the walnuts, I think, and up to a certain period were picked by hand. And then one day my father showed me that they had mechanical harvesting, so that was the godsend. Shaking the trees. Of course, you had to pick them up. But now I think they just haul them and go done by machine. Let's see, I went to Ellis. I had kindergarten, Ellis School to 6th grade. In fact, a lot of the teachers that were teaching then still come to the fruit stand, so it's really nice to see. I went to Fremont High for 4 years, and that was a lot of fun. And it was just fun to be with the community. As Manny was telling us earlier, we did have a sense of a community. We didn't think about it then because that's all we knew, you know. And I remember taking the bus to school, and then I remember the school parades, which I think would be kind of fun if Sunnyvale somehow was able to do a parade like on a Sunday morning. I think that would be really cool. And, you know, go down maybe down Mercy Avenue in that area, because it's really quiet on Sunday mornings in Sunnyvale. I think that would be something that we can put on the list of things to do.
They used to do that.
Yes.
There was a parade.
Yeah, we used to have a
I
parade.
remember, because my older kids were in it, and then all of a sudden we heard that it stopped, and I was so disappointed.
Yeah, it's
I
nice.
had so much fun.
When the schools were involved, and they had the marching band, and I think that would be a nice thing to bring back.
They didn't have enough people or something.
Yeah.
That was the reason for that.
So I think that, and I think with the Orchard Heritage Park, with Opie, that's something that could become a reality as well. We have a lot of plans for that, but I think we need to get it built, and then we can just go for it. The other thing I remember, the love, and as Manny said, the nurturing, the camaraderie. I mean, as farmers, everybody would help each other. If we were shorthanded, somebody would come over and help us run the belt for cherries, or you know, haul the cherries from point A to point B, whatever it was. It was just a wonderful. Well, we're still a great community, but I think that, like many of you, a lot of you have been here for a long time, and we feel that sense, and it's really nice. And I know from at the stand, another reason why I want to keep the stand going in the future is that people, it gives them a sense of community, and it's really nice for myself, of course, since I spent my entire life there, to be able to share it with others and let children know where food comes from. I marvel at the idea when I bring children in and take them into the orchard. You know, they have no idea where cherries or fruit comes from. And they just love it. And however, at the end of the tour, I always tell them now, you make sure you go to school and you get a good education, and don't wake up in the morning and want to be a cherry farmer. You don't want to do that. You know? Now that I'm working with a lot of the cherry growers in the entire world, which is really exciting for me, the state of California, the state of Washington, Oregon, Idaho, down in South America, I'm working with cherry growers down there. Really, all of them are from there's generational past. There's not a whole lot of people out there that just says, I'm going to become a cherry farmer, because it's too tough, and the weather, but it's a lot of fun. We like it. And we like to eat the fruit, and we like to give you the good fruits of our labor. On that note, what else I would like to say? With the property that, as I'm sure most of you are aware of, we're developing the property. It's been an extremely emotional issue for us, our family. And I know for you too, because I know you love it so. Just magnetize that about 10 million times for our family. It's a very hard thing to let go. I've been finding really hard to keep the cherry stand where it's at, and to rebuild it, and to bring the water structure tower over, to incorporate the past and link it to the future. I think it's really important. I really want to do this. And so we will be developing the property, but my father, he's 64 going on 30. So he's still very strong. He's going to attend the orchard at the Orchard Heritage Park at the community center. There's also a 3-acre parcel cherry orchard that my father's been replanting, new varieties like the Rainier cherries. That is also owned by the city. So we'll still be able to give tours at the cherry orchard and I'm sure that's going to be there for many, many years to come. So not all is going to be lost. And I just want to say thank you. I see a lot of faces that I know that's come by the stand years and years, and thanks for your support and your involvement, and I appreciate it. And thanks so much for having me here. And on that note, and the library, oh yes, I do want to remember. I used to come to the library. Not a lot, but I do remember coming to the library, and I always remember meeting friends and potential boyfriends. And it was a lot of fun because, you know, parents would drop us off, you know, and you know how we had to get us little girls. And of course, like Manny says, the librarians were always telling us to be quiet. But it was a fun time. But it's nice to see the library so vibrant and helpful and moving into the future with all the high technology, and it's incorporated into this. It's just a fabulous entity. And happy birthday, library, Sunnyvale Library. Happy birthday to the school district, 100 years, and happy birthday to our family for 100 years of cherry pickers.
Yeah.
I wanted to thank all the speakers. Thank you to Manny and Ann and Deborah. We appreciate your time, and thanks for sharing your thoughts. At this point in the program, we wanted to kind of open things up to you. I want you to think in your minds maybe some things that happened to you in Sunnyvale. Maybe you were also helping pick some of the fruit. Maybe you have other memories of the library or just living in the valley. So hang on to those. That's coming up. I want to allow you to share those thoughts. Before we move on, I'd like to just share a few announcements. I wanted to bring your attention again to the displays, and I want to thank the Sunnyvale Historical Society and also two of our librarians here, Steve Sloan and Mary Chartrain, for the display up here in front. Thank you very much. If you look towards the back of the room, which I'm sure you noticed just a few things back there when you came in, we have some flyers for some of our upcoming programs. Two of those which speak very closely to our topic today are history related. One of them is tomorrow night, and we're having a lady come in, and she's going to tell us a little bit about the 1800s, and she's going to do that kind of first person. She's going to represent a lady called Mary Ellen Pleasant, who was an abolitionist and businesswoman in the late 1800s. And we also have a historical fiction author, and she will be here on June 7th. Her name is Ethel Herr. So look for both of those flyers in the back of the room. Let me see. As you're also probably aware, we're going to celebrate this event, our 85th birthday, in true birthday fashion. I'm not going to make you sing, but we're going to have birthday cake and punch when we're all finished here. So now I want you to just kind of maybe draw on some of your thoughts about the past or things that have happened to you in Sunnyvale. And if you'd like to come up and share those thoughts, or if you have maybe some questions for some of our speakers this evening, please feel free. You can either stand up and do that, or I can bring the microphone over to you, however you feel works best. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to share? Would you like to use the microphone, or do you just want to stand? Okay. Why don't you come on up, since I think my cord won't quite stretch that far.
Hi, my name is Bob. I grew up in Willow Glen, and as we were called, Santa Clara Valley was called the prune and apricot capital of the world, and I started working in the canneries back around 1960, which was somewhat late, but it was a lot of fun. That was the only jobs available at the time. The electronics industry hadn't blossomed out yet. I think Ampex came in the mid-50s. I mean, not Ampex, IBM. But what you used to do was you'd get there at 6 o'clock in the morning, or maybe 7, and it would be freezing cold. And then about noon, it would be about 90 in the canneries. And so you'd be sweating. But most of the women worked from about 7 until 5 in the afternoon. And they also canned spinach. And the Almaden Valley was loaded with farmers who grew strawberries. And so you drive out there and get fresh strawberries right out in the I guess they call them strawberry patch. But you know, things like that, and then gradually it turned into electronics. But I remember working at the county 4 or 5 years, and you made about $3 an hour. So, you know, the kids nowadays don't know what work is either. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to share?
Me.
I'm actually sharing something from a bookmobile patron. My name is Chris Doxton. I didn't introduce myself, and I am one of the librarians here. And this woman comes to the bookmobile quite regularly, and her name is Fanny Gonzalez-Werfer. She was born in 1918 and has lived in Sunnyvale all of her life. And she said she remembered going to the library in a home near the Murphy Estate on California Avenue. And it was run by someone named Mrs. Rhodes. And she and her sister used to go to the library in the 1920s there. And then later during World War II, she said she remembers going to the library in a civic auditorium. Maybe some of you went to the library when it was there. She also, Nanny, was a secretary at Bishop School for a long time. So I think she might have been before your time. But anyway, so that was a memory from one of our bookmobile patrons.
I think it'll start here. Thank you.
Well, my name is Mervyn Roy, but I don't own the store called Mervyn's California, unfortunately. Well, I'm pretty happy here that Sunnyvale Library is having its 85th birthday, and I'm fortunate to be here. I'm from India basically, and for the last 2 years, I've been following and seeing what Sunnyvale Library has been doing here. And remember that they were, at the time of renovation, still they were operating from the van, and that's great to see that the library is closed. I have been to practically all the libraries here in the Silicon Valley, and I'm a member too. I'm a software engineer at Microsystems. And just because I'm here talking for Sunnyvale, it's not. I have seen the computers in practically all the labs. And I have just to say that Sunnyvale has the best computer facilities that here. Because some places you see the computers don't work. Well, I'm not pointing at the library. Some places you see, oh, what's happened? Oh, the computer's gone today. And some say that, oh, we are having some word 2 or word 3. Those days are gone, you know. So I have found that Sunnyvale Library, you always feel like, you know, going away far, but you always feel like coming back because Sunnyvale Library gives you always something and always that extra. I had an offer to go to the East Coast side for a job, but I stayed back because this place, Sunnyvale Library, as well as Sunnyvale, gives me that extra, added affection to be back in this area. It's a great place. I have some friends and colleagues who have gone back to India, and they had a lot of reading time over here. They say that this library has got some great books, which they could not get back in Asia also. They are research scientists, and they have got a lot of study here. Something which recollects to my mind that Sunnyvale Library was having some show over there outside, and there's one of the best magicians who was here on the show. And he says, you know where I learned my magic? Could anybody tell me where? From the Sunnyvale Public Library. Just imagine, the great guy, you know, he was telling, you know, everybody thought that he learned his magic from some age-old guy or something. He said, I have to come and read those books. Read books, don't ask me. You can take away my trade. So that's it. Just imagine that Sunnyvale Library has been doing so great. So anyway, once again, I wish it a happy birthday, 85th year. Let's hope that it reaches 100. It will, definitely, right? Right? We are only staying 100, but still a long way. Who knows where and all that. But anyway, that's all the time, right?
That was great. Anybody else?
My name is Jessica Lee. I'm a recent resident, as you can see. But before I came to Silicon Valley because of job opportunity, I lived in Mountain View. I went to Mountain View Library and looking for material, couldn't find it. So they suggested me come down to Sunnyvale. It's very easy to get there. Just take the Avenida around. So I did. I came here. I looked at lawn we have out there. There are 8 high, all of them. I said, what city is this? Can maintain lawn with such precision, high quality? I walk in there, I see the material I needed, friendliness and all that. The next month, I bought a house in Sunnyvale. My son, at the time when I was purchasing the house, he wasn't here. So we were concerned that he might not like the place. We took him up here, and the first thing we took him here is Sunnyvale Library. He loved it. He played with the computer, he looked at the book, and he said, Mom, this is a great place, I like it. So we went to school. But over the years, I have been very involved in our community because we gave so much back from our community. This year, I serve as Sunnyvale School Board. It's my personal great pleasure. But I want to say that the library is such important to our education. Our children come to the library, do their research. Not only that, the library has a mobile. In many of the cities, as you know, that we have people who have a great difficulty of transporting themselves into downtown area, which is this area. Having a mobile out there, parking by the schools, by the villages, really allow those people who cannot access the library, use the library. I think that's the greatest thing that the library stands for. Many of the neighborhoods that out there could not come here. I want to thank you, the library, and it's so wonderful. I know you're going to be here. The school's been here 100 years. Next time we celebrate, we will celebrate together. And I just want to say one more thing. The other thing that interests me in Sunnyvale is that I drove around and the leadership of Sunnyvale one time, and Anne was my tour to the whole class. She drove us by Orchard, which is right by the community center, the place we're going to have Opie. She said, look, that's where we're going to have a museum. I looked at that, I said, I'm so glad I came to the city of Sunnyvale. It's the only place that I know, not only is the leading edge in the technology, but it knows where it's coming from. It treasures its past. It will have citizens work so hard in order to treasure and preserve some piece of the city for our future. And she's been my role model since. I want to thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah.
I'm Sheila Winters. I've lived here in Sunnyvale. We was out for 50 years. And I remember the library when it was part of the old city hall. I remember Miss Eva Vernon, who was the librarian, and I remember her going, told me to be quiet. Well, I went to McKinley School, which was right across the street from the old library. And believe it or not, I found my old library. Today, before I came here, I was docent at the museum, so I came on and found, and I remember stories my mother-in-law used to tell me. She came here in 1925, when we still had the WCTU reading room, which was the origin of the Sunnyvale Library. And it was about in the middle of the 200 block of Murphy Avenue. And what happened, she said, in the off-season in the academy, she'd go to the library and she was able to read all the new books in the library. She only lived around the corner. That's how small it was. I remember going there quite often because the bus stop for the school, for the high school was at the city hall, just right there. I'd go to the library on the way home. I also remember reading on the way home. You ever say, excuse me, to a light post, look at reading on the way home? That's what I remember about the library. I also remember when the Chamber of Commerce, not the Chamber of Commerce, but the Chamber offices were part of the library. Okay, yeah, it was part of the library. Yeah.
Thank you.
For those who don't know me, I'm Landon Kurt Knoll, and I got started really in city service by joining the library board, and partly because they had volunteer services and various things that I could volunteer for, and I said, well, I'm a very frequent user of the library, And so I decided to apply for it and was gracious. The council was gracious enough to actually appoint me when I served as vice chair. And I really, at that point, I was really started to see learn a lot about the extra services, like with the bookmobile, a lot of the community activities, and realized that the library was really a central part of life here in the city. And that was actually what prompted me to run for city council, because I said, well, you know, the library sort of lives or falls based upon the ability of the city to maintain funding for it, so I better run for city council so I can help the library. And so I got on the city council and vice mayor and so forth. But actually, one of my prized possessions for all this is library gold card. And it's fun to hand it to a new librarian that hasn't seen any of these things. If you're on the library board and graduate, they give you this gold card. And I tell they look at it and they finally realize, yeah, it is a Sunnyvale library card. But I tell them you get great interest rate on gold cards. But the library is something that I think is really a really precious part of the city. We were talking a lot about the past of the library. I'm also very excited about the future. As being sort of at the time the council nerd, one of the things I really saw is the library's ability to enhance the city's information services, such as the internet. There was a common question that was asked of me was, well, the growth of the internet, are the books going to become obsolete? And I said, well, no, actually the internet is the Librarians' Full Employment Act. With more and more information, you still need librarians to be able to catalog, to sort, and help guide you where it's going to go. And so what I'm really excited about is the library 25 years from now, which will be very different than it is now, but it'll also be very exciting, a lot more information and servicing a lot more people from the young to the old. So while I enjoy the past and I prize my gold card, I'm also looking forward to the future.
Yes, my name's Tim Rich, and I do a lot of volunteering in the city, but in my real life, I'm an aerospace engineer. And one day, I was tasked by my manager to go find some patent information. And he knew nothing about where to get patents. He said, well, go back to Washington. Well, I found out at that time the city had a patent library, and that used to be located over in the Rainer Park area. And so I went over there, and I found the patents that I needed, lickety-split. Went back to work, and my boss was really happy. And since then, the patent library has now been moved over in this part, and it's now Sci-Cube, and I guess I'll need help. Center for Innovation. I don't remember it either. But one of the great things about living in Sunnyvale was the patent library and that service that it's provided. And the reason I also bring this up is because if any of you are members of AAA, and if you open up the AAA book and see what it says for Sunnyvale, it doesn't really say it's the heart of Silicon Valley. It doesn't say it's a great place to live. But it mentions that the only collection of all the patents in the United States west of the Mississippi is located in Sunnyvale. Wow. And so, if AAA recognizes our library as the place to be, well, I think we should really know that we live in a very fine place. And so thanks for the library for putting Sunnyvale on the map.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Laura. I'll let you introduce yourself.
My name is Laura Nakanishi, and we moved up to Sunnyvale in 1960 of July from Southern California. And the new building opened under Colin Lucas, who was a director, in October of 1960. And in February of 61, I began work here as a librarian part-time. And I'm still here today. So in the interim, I did work for 11 years as a full-timer. But I have seen the library building expand twice, and I've worked under every director of libraries that there has been, under every administration. and I've seen it grow and the services increase, and it's been a wonderful experience for me all these years, and I have really thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you.
It looks like that might be about it. I want to thank everybody for sharing. It's obvious that the library's meant quite a bit to people across Sunnyvale and even outside of Sunnyvale. Will you please join me in helping us celebrate our 85th birthday? Happy birthday, Sunnyvale Library. Let's have some cake.